Today we're going to learn about two new types of numbers that you guys have never seen before. One is called imaginary numbers and the other is called complex. So what you need to know about this is that imaginary numbers are square roots of negative numbers. So in the past what we've had is when we have a quadratic, we take the square root of both sides and we get a equals plus or minus. And if this were a positive 9, we would get a equals plus or minus 3. But now if we take the square root of negative 9, we've called that undefined before. But we're going to introduce a new number, and that's called an imaginary number. And we're going to take the square root of 9, which is 3, but the square root of a negative 1 is going to be defined as I. So what you need to know is I is equal to the square root of negative 1. And I'm not sure if you guys have thought about it before, but if I take the square root of something times the square root of something, I get that value. So if I take the square root of negative 1 times the square root of negative 1, I will get negative 1. Or we will write I squared equals a negative 1. Now that's kind of a weird concept. We'll come back to that again, but you'll want to highlight that, highlight what I is, and then let's use that in a couple of problems. So if I have a quadratic, which is a variable squared, we'll still take the square root of both sides. We'll still get plus or minus, but now instead of just getting 4, because it's a negative, when you take the square root of a negative number, you always have I, and the square root of 16 is 4. Problem number 3, take the square root, I get k equals plus or minus. Think of this as taking the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 80. The square root of negative 1 by definition is an I. Oh, and here's where we're going to have to break the square root of 80 into two pieces. So the square root of 80, a perfect square, 16 and 5 is 80. So this is what we did the other day. So we have to break those up into two different numbers, one being a perfect square. So the square root of 16 is 4. We'll have this I and the square root of 5. That's a little bit more difficult. So hit pause and go back and re-listen to this value again, and then try problem number 4 on your own. Number 4's example. Again, we take the square root of both sides, so we'll get n equals plus or minus. Anytime that you take a square root of a negative number, you'll end up with an I. Square root of 76 is not perfect, so we need to break it up. Remember some of the perfect squares, 1, 4, 9, 16. I know that 4 times 19 is 76. So n's final answer will be a plus or minus 2 from the square root of 4, I square root of 19. So this is your introduction to imaginary numbers. The next clip will be on complex numbers. What I would do is I would do a couple of these on your worksheet and then go back and look at the video on complex numbers.